Good morning, everybody. My name is Terry Eichel. I am the Executive Director for the Interreligious Eco-Justice Network. We are a faith-based environmental group in Connecticut. Thank you so much for joining IREJN for this webinar called Urgency and Opportunity, Taking Advantage of Federal Tax Credits Before They're Gone. I would like to first open with IREJN's Land Acknowledgement Statement. We acknowledge that Connecticut, Algonquin, for land on the Tidal River, is the traditional home of Mohegans, Pequots, and many other tribes. We are grateful for our Native people's care for their home and will strive to preserve it for the next 7 generations. In 2022, the Inflation Reduction Act was signed into law by President Biden, which was the most significant climate legislation in history. Among many other things, the bill extended the investment tax credit, which is a tax credit for renewable energy projects, to nonprofits such as houses of worship. On July 4th, 2025, President Trump signed H.R. 1, also known as One Big Beautiful Bill, into law, which ended many of these rebates and programs. During his first administration, Trump was also phasing out the renewable tax credits. However, the phase-out was very gradual, and the tax credits were immediately restored by President Biden. And then, as I've already mentioned, the tax credits were extended to nonprofits. That is not the case this time. The tax credits are ending very abruptly, and the timeline is short. I decided to put together a webinar on the federal tax credits with a specific focus on solar because I know there are many houses of worship that have been investigating solar, and I wanted them to have all the information that I have. Having said that, not all of the information is currently available. The government has not released every guideline and regulation, but I will share what I know so far. Here's where I say, I am not a tax professional or a lawyer. I am the executive director of an environmental nonprofit organization, and I have spent the past month reading, learning, and talking to experts. I didn't want to wait any longer on this webinar because of the short timeline. So I'm going to share what I've learned and will note areas that need further clarification. I've also created a Google document where you can add questions and we will find the answers. Everyone will have access to this Google document. I also want to briefly introduce IREJN's new outreach coordinator, Rosalind Reeves. She is an environmental professional who has worked with the Department of Energy and Environmental Connection in Connecticut. She organizes her local food pantry, is the head of the Social Justice Committee at her synagogue, and organized 3 synagogues around voting rights in the last election. I'm really glad to be working with her. After my presentation, we'll do a Q&A session. Please put your questions in the chat or Q&A. Let me share my screen. Here we go. Here we go. All right. So the federal tax rebate, I'm going to start with commercial solar. The current base rebate is 30%. From this bill, it says, depending on when you start your project, and I'm going to get into that, it will be eligible for the rebate until the end of 2027 or the end of 2029. I will definitely detail this for you. Interestingly, the adders for additional rebates were untouched. So even though the 30% base rebate will be gone, the adders for additional rebates still remain. So for energy communities, which is generally communities where there was a coal plant or mining, it's 10%. Prevailing wage is a labor requirement, 10%. Domestic content has to do with your supply chain, 10%. And low to moderate income communities can be 10 to 20%. So those rebates are actually will still be available. I'm not 100% certain how that will factor in, but they're still there. So I tend to think about this in sort of 3 buckets when you think about commercial solar, and houses of worship qualify in Connecticut as commercial solar. So if you commence construction by July 4th, 2026, you will have until December 31st, 2029 to get the project installed and energized. And I put commence construction in quotes because it's a specific term. It currently includes significant construction, something like wiring, electrical wiring. It has to comprise 10% of the project. So it's significant construction. It's not like buying lumber. It has to be something fairly significant, or a minimum 5% deposit, which must include the complete cost. And this is important. Most installers are recommending a slightly higher minimum deposit because if you have overruns to your project and that you're no longer meeting that 5% deposit, you wouldn't be able to get the rebate. Starting January 1st, 2026, all projects will have to comply with Prohibited Foreign Entity (PFE) regulations. And I'm going to explain that a little bit later too. Projects that commence construction by December 31st, 2025, so by the end of this calendar year, will not have to meet those PFE regulations. So the best option is to have a contract and a 10 to 15% deposit with an installer by December 31st, 2025. Your project will qualify for the tax credit. You will avoid the PFE requirements. A larger deposit will include the overruns, which will help prevent a scenario where you haven't put a large enough deposit down. And I would ask the solar installers if you could possibly do a refundable deposit. It's possible some of the larger installers might be able to do that. It's certainly worth the ask. If you commence construction between January 1st, anytime actually after January 21st, 2026, you will have to meet those PFE requirements. So once January 1st, 2026 hits, the PFE requirements are mandatory. However, if you commence construction before July 4th, 2026, you will still have until December 31st, 2029 to get your project installed and energized, and you will get your full rebate. If you commence construction after July 4th, 2026, you will have until the end of 2027 to have the project energized and online. So the timeline is obviously much shorter, but it would still qualify for the tax credit and you would still need to meet the PFE requirements. So obviously the best case scenario that provides the tax credits with the least amount of regulations is to get a deposit in and a contract signed by the end of this calendar year. Next best is to begin construction before July 4th, 2026, because then you will have a longer time. You'll have until the end of 2029 to install and energize your program. If you can't do that, if you can commence construction after July 4th, 2026, you will still have another year and a half to get your project energized and online. Something to note for Connecticut houses of worship is that we have a Connecticut non-residential small commercial program here. So Connecticut's solar for commercial is sort of in three different buckets. We've got small, that's where most houses of worship end up, medium, and large. Currently, there's a cap on the small commercial programs, and Eversource and UI approve projects twice a year by a lottery system. So this past February, it's February and August, this past February, the application, it was actually an undersubscribed program, so every project was approved. Often it is oversubscribed, which means some houses of worship have had to apply multiple times before they are selected on the lottery system. However, there is an advocacy opportunity to change this. Connecticut's Public Utility Regulatory Authority is currently considering changes to both the residential and the non-residential program. One thing IREJN has been advocating now for over a year is that they lift or remove the cap for small commercial solar because it will not have any negative impact on the ratepayer and would allow more projects to be approved in faster timeline. So I'm hoping that this advocacy opportunity presents itself in the next legislative session. I will keep you posted. It will definitely help houses of worship and small businesses and nonprofits. Anything with a smaller solar array get approved in a quicker fashion. So, prohibited foreign entity. This is called Foreign Entities of Concern, FEOC, in the House bill, and then it was renamed Prohibited Foreign Entity, PFE, in the Senate bill. So I've been referring to it as a PFE, but you may also hear it referred to as FEOC. They're the same thing. The foreign entities of concern are China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea. And again, these FEOC, PFE regulations look at foreign entities' relationship to your organization in three different ways. First is foreign control. Does the organization have a close connection to a PFE? Do you have a are you controlled by a company in Russia or China, Iran, or North Korea? This is unlikely to be any house of worship. Foreign influence is the next one. If your organization is connected to a PFE, does that PFE have the ability to appoint officers or otherwise influence? There may be some religious faith traditions that have connections to uh, religious organizations in those countries. I would think the influence would only come in if there is the ability of a leader in the foreign country to appoint, say, a religious leader or a lay leader or somehow direct finances. Again, that's not going to apply to the vast majority of houses of worship in America, but I guess it's a possibility. Material assistance is where the PFE regulations are going to impact houses of worship. It applies to the supply chain, and it begins January 1st, 2026. And I saw recently a chart with some percentages. I will try to find that again and share it with you. I think this is going to be something that is going to have to be handled by the actual solar companies, changing their panels and the materials that they purchase, their procurement. One of my questions for them is, how do houses of worship actually manage this? But this is the PFE requirement that's probably going to hit houses of worship, is the material assistance regulation. Interestingly, battery storage for solar was not impacted by HR 1, the one big beautiful bill. Neither was geothermal or ground source heat pumps. So as of now, the tax credit will actually extend through 2033. We also have additional state programs that make battery storage very cost effective. And houses of worship that want to be heating and cooling centers should include battery storage as part of their plan. Solar combined with battery is a more cost-effective, value-added way to have solar. And I honestly think if it's something you're thinking about, let's start investigating it now. The additional state programs really do help with the cost. And I'm not 100% certain that the battery storage and all the other rebates that are still in effect will remain in effect. It's just unclear whether future legislation would try to change any of that. So I think moving forward as fast as you can as possible is probably a good idea. I do want to do an upcoming webinar on battery storage with IREJN, and I will offer it to you folks and let you know what it is. I will let you know as soon as I have it scheduled. So federal rebates for residential solar, they are currently 30%. If you'd like to purchase and own your project outright, you will qualify until December 31st, 2025. The system must be installed and energized by the end of this calendar year to qualify for the rebate. If you have been thinking about solar and you want that rebate, you really have to call a solar installer today, because they are definitely getting swamped with requests and they're booking into the future. Solar lease projects will qualify until December 31st, 2030. I have an asterisk at that particular date because I've heard a variety of dates and I'm not 100% certain. But one solar installer that I've been talking to that has had, they've been down to DC and talking to legislators, said this is the date. So, but the other dates I've seen are 2026, 2027. It's clear there's a longer runway for solar lease projects. So that's something to consider. The solar company with a lease project, the solar company gets the rebate and passes a portion of that rebate onto the homeowner, which reduces the cost. It's a good option for people who want to lower their electricity bill and install solar for no upfront cost. The other benefits are that it adds clean energy to the grid and reduces peak demand. I purchased a solar array for our house and my sister went with the lease option, and we've both been very happy. My sister says that she has definitely seen a reduction in her electric bill. It is definitely lower than it would be if she had not installed solar at all. solar leases do not have as high a return on investment as purchasing your project, but it's still a good option, um, especially if you can't purchase a system by the end of this year. Your whole house of worship could do a solar campaign for your members, and I'm suggesting this because it can be a significant fundraising opportunity for your house of worship. The Unitarian Universalist Society East in Manchester did a solar campaign with their members a few years ago. It was very successful and they raised a good amount of money. Um, and they did it because the solar installers will offer referral fees for each installation your house of worship gets. So this applies to purchased and leased systems. Earthlight Technologies, I was speaking with them last week, and these are the numbers they gave me. For the first installation, it would be $1,000 to your house of worship. The second through the fifth installation would be $500 each. And then the sixth installation and up, after that, it's $1,000 each. So you can see how that would really add up and would be helpful to your members to access clean energy. I put together a page of other resources, and I will send these links out to you. We've got the Tax Law Center and Lawyers for Good Government have some excellent resources and updates on their websites. The Energy Community Map is a map of the energy communities in Connecticut. It's a lot of southwestern Connecticut. Again, it's where coal plants, I think, used to be. Connecticut Solar and Storage is a good organization. They've got a good list of solar installers. It's not a comprehensive list. Not every solar person is on there, but it's a good place to start. We did a good webinar with Connecticut Green Bank last month, June 25th, on financing large clean energy projects. Connecticut Green Bank is a great partner for these larger projects, can really make them feasible for you. And so I highly recommend checking out this particular webinar. And finally, I have an IREJN Google document with where we're going to put questions and answers, and I will send this out and everyone will have access to it. Finally, I've got a save the date webinar on battery storage. Hopefully that'll be early September 2025. And then Thursday, September 18th, IREJN is hosting our annual Energy Efficiency House of Worship webinar. We're doing it in conjunction with Sustainable CT and the utilities. We've done this every year around the Small Business Energy Advantage Program and the Micro Business Energy Advantage Program. More than 230 houses of worship have completed these programs. It has definitely reduced energy consumption and energy costs. I highly recommend it. If you have a house of worship that hasn't done this yet, then I highly recommend you recommend it to them. Anyway, on September 21st, Sunday, is Sunday. It is a nationwide event around wind and solar. The big statewide event here in Connecticut will be at Central Connecticut State University from 12 to 4, with local events around on September 20th. And you can find out more at thirdact.org Sunday. I'm recording this webinar and I will put it up on our website along with all of these resources. I really wanted to highlight the fact that time is of the essence. And if you are interested in solar for your house of worship or for yourself, moving forward quickly is definitely the best way possible. So thank you so much. And I really appreciate if you have any questions, you can always email me. Thank you so much. Have a great afternoon.